When it comes to investing, retirement, taxes, healthcare, and estate planning, the decisions you make today can greatly affect the quality of life for you and your loved ones tomorrow. What you need is straight and unbiased information on the most important issues you'll face when planning for your retirement and financial future. Good news, you found Premier Retirement Radio with Jeff Vogan. Jeff is the founder of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management, and he's been guiding people financially and into retirement for 30 years. So get ready for an hour of the most comprehensive financial information on the radio. Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan. And now here's Jeff Vogan and Jeff Shade.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. I'm Jeff Shade. I'm just here to ask the questions, but the words of wisdom and solid advice, well, they come from the other Jeff in this radio program. It's Jeff Vogan, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Hey, Jeff, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. We've got a great show lined up for our folks today. If you've just joined us, you tune in and you're going, oh my gosh, it's another one of these silly financial shows and they're going to be blah, blah, blahing about all this kind of stuff. This is a different type of financial show here. Every week we strive to give you sincere and actionable ideas that can help you get to and through retirement. And there's so much information that we can use today, but I want to start off by talking about Trump's cabinet picks, Jeff. And it appears to me that people like Elon Musk, of course, he's going to be overseeing some budget waste here. These are more business people who are used to running a business and profit and loss as opposed to politicians. How do you think the strategy of these business people is going to change the outcome here?
Well, I think it's going to rock the boat big time. I don't think there's going to be a lot of happy people. I mean, they're already talking about making people come back to work to the office so they can be supervised and actually be productive instead of sitting at home and doing who knows what on the taxpayer dime. I think government workers, should be held accountable. I think many of them, not all of them, I have a lot of clients have been government workers, and some of them, have worked very hard, and others have, had kind of a job that, I don't know that it's that necessary, but they got a nice pension, they had good benefits, didn't have to stress out too bad because they weren't running a business, or in some cases having a boss tell them what to do. I do know a little bit about how government works. I do know that I pay a lot of taxes, and I do know that I'm a little upset about how I see it getting spent. And I think there is a lot of fat. Instead of trimming government, government typically just hires more people. I mean, they don't want to offend anybody. It's easy to spend money when you don't have to actually work for it. You just tax it and take it and, redistribute it however you see fit to your friends and to cronies. And, if somebody wants to hire a friend or do something else, I mean, you can put it on the taxpayer dime pretty easy. You can even manipulate the pensions by switching positions. I mean, my own father-in-law did that. I won't say what position and where, but anyway, he was a high-level accountant for the county where he lives in and had an assistant. Well, after he got to his full retirement years, he flipped positions and got a new retirement plan for the next half as an assistant to his buddy, who was his assistant for the first 20 years. A double and triple. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I think are kind of, yes, they're legal. And they, if I was in there, I would probably take advantage of it too, because it's there. But there's a lot of just loopholes and silly things that don't make a whole lot of sense to me as far as wasteful spending. But, what I'm hearing already by Ramaswamy and Elon Musk is that some of these grant monies, millions and millions of dollars to, study this, that, or, what position a gnat sits on a bagel before he takes a bite, or, just stupid stuff.
Sure.
I don't know where that came from, even why I thought of that. But, just dumb stuff that's that silly. Yeah, I just don't understand why we're giving so much money. A lot of this is to foreign countries. I think it's probably for favors. There's a lot of deal making. It's side deal making. And again, it's just become so complacent about spending our money that, taxes go up, deficits go up. They keep on having to, threaten to close down government because they can't pay all their bills because they keep on just throwing money around. And they think, well, all we have to do is raise taxes. We'll just take more from the people that are working hard. Ramaswamy and Elon Musk know what it's like to work hard, knows what it's like to take risks. And I think they are equally as upset about how they see government spending money as I am, and many of us who vote for our politicians to go in and make a difference, and then they end up not doing it. They end up taking the gravy train to retirement and manipulating the money the best they can. And I think a lot of what both of those guys have done, being billionaires, being people who have run huge companies, and Trump as well. They know how to run businesses. They're going to lop off the fat. They're going to cut out or try to cut out a lot of positions that are meaningless. They're going to try to increase productivity by making people come to work and have actual supervision and be held accountable for the job that they're required to do. I think that should have been in place forever, and maybe it used to be, but it's gotten kind of lax because nobody's been held to a high standard. At least that's my perception, and I think that's the perception of many taxpayers. So it'll be nice to get them, in there kind of lopping off the fat and creating a more efficient system. Now, it's going to have to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of pushback. There's going to be probably all kinds of lawsuits and things. And I don't even know if they're going to be able to do what they do, because it seems like, once you get into a government position, there's no way you can get fired or taken out. But I think we're going to set a new precedent if it does happen. And I think it's part of the cost-cutting measures that have to happen. If Trump really is going to lower taxes, they have to cut costs. Lowering taxes is going to be inflationary in the fact that, it's going to be huge deficit spending, and it's going to be, hard to pay that unless they keep printing money. If they keep printing money, it creates more of an inflationary pressure unless they fix the spending. So they have to cut expenses in order to make the tax cuts even reasonable. And I hope they can do it at the same time, because if they just start cutting taxes, they're going to have shortfalls, and that might even cause a big market crash. If they start lopping off employees and positions, and there's a ton of unemployment and government jobs that are being deleted from existence, those people are going to be looking for jobs. That's going to be an economy that isn't spending money. And it could cause a huge backlash on the economy. I could see, if they try to do it with a clean sweep, it's going to be pretty harsh. It's not going to be just like picking off a rubber band and having it hurt for a minute. It's going to be like lopping off your arm and waiting to grow another one. It's going to be pretty serious. So I hope they can do it methodically, not like a business where they have to appease stockholders by next quarter. But hopefully they can do something over the next 4 years that they can appease the voters, not screw things up so bad by trying to fix it. And this is so broken that anything you do to fix it's going to hurt. I think it's going to result in probably the catalyst for the market correction that I think really is due to happen anyway. But there could be a lot of things that negative repercussions of it. It all sounds great. It all is necessary. But how they do it, I think, is going to be the biggest difference. We'll see what happens. But I think the idea is fine. I just hope the methodology and hope it's systematic enough to where it doesn't rock the boat so bad that government doesn't function, that unemployment goes through the roof, that the economy struggles because there isn't that extra spending. There's just a lot more to it than the simple business plan of, we can do this with less employees. Let's just do that. They're talking about a one-trick pony, basically, when they're running a business. It's either, not for Elon Musk, he's got several, but electric cars is his main thing. Okay, well, if that's all you're building, then you know exactly what it takes. But the government is so multifaceted, so deep and so bureaucratic, and so many people in place that, might know stuff that you can't really undo, or skill sets that you can't really take out. So they've got to be very careful in, what they eliminate. We also have to be very careful that there's not some pushback and people deleting information and basically sabotaging, the next people that come in to try to run that department. So there's just a whole lot of things that have gone through my mind as far as pulling those people in. I think, businessmen from outside the Beltway is great. However, they also have a little bit of a lack of understanding of how government works. And I think they're going to get a rude awakening as they learn it. And I hope they can integrate without causing too much problems. I also think there's a perception of a little bit of self-dealing here. When you've got all these billionaires that have all done very well, that own businesses, there's a lot of legislation that can take place, even executive orders that can take place that are very constructive to those businesses for those people around him that he's, putting in place. And so I think we have to be very careful that it doesn't look like a self-dealing proposition, even though we know that that's how the government works. It's all been self-dealing. Everybody's, patted the pockets of their friends, their donors, and people that help them secure that position and lobby them, et cetera. So I think Trump has to be a little bit careful as to what type of regulatory climate he creates. If he creates a regulatory climate where, the only AI that works is what Elon Musk owns, that's going to look a little bit suspicious, right? So hopefully the changes are across the board, make all businesses able to compete equally and not just favor those people that he's got around him, as kind of a kickback favor.
Well, hopefully these Trump picks, as you said, because they're business people, will trickle down to us in terms of the taxes that we pay. And I think, running the country as a business and maybe, as you said, looking outside of the Beltway is the way to go. We'll see here. We've got 4 years to work on this, but I'm pretty optimistic about that. You know, we're talking about taxes a little bit, and I was thinking about with Obama, we had a blue wave. Then we went with Trump, a red wave. Then we had Biden, which was a blue wave. And then, of course, we have Trump, which is going to be a red wave again. You know, the waves come in, they go out, and it brings different things. And as far as tax planning goes, Jeff, how can you do tax planning effectively when the goalposts are continuing to move or the waves are different colors?
Well, tax planning right now has been okay with the new Trump tax cuts. And I think it's interesting, speaking of, tax planning, is, we've been kind of hurrying to pay taxes now while the 25 brackets down to 22 and the 28 brackets down to 24%. That's the tax brackets. And it makes sense to pay less taxes at a lower tax rate on less money now than a higher tax rate on more money later. If you just do the math, it works out in your favor. So we've been able to do a lot of tax planning just by taking advantage of the Trump tax cuts. And we thought they were going to go away after next year. So 2026, we're going to go back to the old way. Now that Trump's in office, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be extended and there's going to be more tax breaks. Sometimes it feels like a gut punch to maybe do a Roth conversion or something, or take money out of an IRA and use that to live on instead of some of your tax-free things like LERPs or Roth IRAs or other deferred type assets that aren't tax really. And some people get feel gut punched when they have to pay that extra tax, but in the long run they're going to save a lot of money. Well, maybe now the gut punch doesn't have to be so hard. We can have maybe instead of one more year to tax plan, we've got at least 4 probably. We have to kind of keep an eye on that. But I think the environment for taxes are going to be fairly favorable with Trump. And I think it's funny that the Democrats were so outraged about these Trump tax cuts and how hurtful they were going to be and how awful they'd be for everybody. And everybody, the middle class was going to be hurt and pay more taxes, blah, 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 blah. Well, as soon as they got in office, what did they do? They executive ordered everything that Trump did except that one. Oh, why not? Well, because they're saving money too. All the politicians have a lower tax bracket. They kind of like it, but they can blame Trump if there's ever a deficit. So, I thought it was kind of what we call kind of a hypocritical move to blow up everything that was good that Trump did, but not the one that they benefited the most by. That didn't really affect their agenda. But I think the tax planning issue is going to be a lot better. We can go a little bit easier, and we have probably a few more years to shuffle things. I still think until we see the actual tax cuts go into play and see how they affect each person's retirement plan remains to be seen. But we know what the current tax situation is. We believe it will get a little bit better, at least for the next 4 years. And, we can plan accordingly, or at least be less nervous about trying to complete all of our, really rigorous and aggressive tax planning before next year. So that's one benefit of having Trump back in office, is it kind of takes a little pressure off of the aggressive tax planner.
You're listening to Premier Retirement with Jeff Oken, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa. We're talking about current events here, in particular Trump's picks for cabinets, more business people than they are politicians, and of course tax planning. Anything that resonates with you, we'd like to hear from you. 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. Use that number to call us and request your no cost, no obligation, no judgment retirement review, the retirement roadmap. A chance for you to talk to Jeff about anything on your mind that has to do with taxes, income plans, investment plans, healthcare, estate plan. So make that call this weekend, 520-780-9059. Leave your name, telephone number, and Shelley will call you back during the week to set up that appointment for you. And again, it's 520-780-9059. You can also find out more about us online at premret.com. Jeff, every week we try to do a case of the week, so this week no different. What was a case that you talked about last week that you can share with us that our listeners might find interesting?
Well, interestingly, last week we had 3 people come in that I did plans for that all had the Arizona State Retirement System and had an annuity type of a pension plan. And I'm going to talk not necessarily about a plan, but a concept of a plan that many people aren't really sure they want to do. Now, let's just say you have, and I'm just going to use rough numbers here. Let's just say you have $500,000 in a retirement plan that they will lump sum you when you retire, or you can take a $46,000 a year pension. Well, somebody thinking, man, that's like what, 8 or 9% on a payout on that. That's pretty darn good. I think when I retire in a couple of years, that sounds nice. Well, what you're giving up by taking that $46,000 a year pension, which sounds great if you add Social Security to it. You and as a pension holder, and Social Security is probably around $2,000 or $3,000 a month as well. Your spouse probably has some. If he or she doesn't, then they get half of yours at full retirement age. So you're pushing, getting up there about probably $8,000 a month. We're talking about $100,000 a year or more. And that might just sound hunky-dory fine to you. But if that pension is really your only savings or a very large part of that savings, what you're doing by taking that fixed annuity from the pension plan is you're giving up control of that asset. In other words, if you needed a chunk of money for something, or heaven forbid, you got hit by a truck, didn't make it for your life expectancy, those payments stop. And if they do go to a spouse, they're either reduced to a certain level, or if you take it just as a single life expectancy, then they're gone. And that the rest of that $500,000 plus the interest that it would have earned is gone. So the question is what should I take? Should I take a joint payout? Should I take a 50% survivor benefit, 75%, 100% survivor benefit and take less money? Or is there something else we can do? Well, insurance companies manage a ton of retirement money. They are pension fund managers, as well as, some hedge funds kind of get involved in that, or some people just make investments and either get lucky or they just tax their people more. But bottom line is, insurance can make a safe pension that you can do personally through an annuity. And I mentioned that pensions are an annuity. A pension is an annuity payout. There's a funding stage where while you're working, you're funding it. And then there's a deferral stage typically where that money that you've put in defers and grows until you finally decide, hey, this is the day I'm going to start taking it out. You can do that as well with a lump sum pension. Now, unfortunately, with some of these like state pensions, city pensions, school pensions, even first responder pensions, police, firemen, and so forth, have a situation where in order to get that pension or turn it on, unlike a 401k or other retirement plan where at 59 and a half, you can move that chunk of money someplace. If it's a lump sum benefit or an annuity payout, that option can only be elected after you're separated from or terminated from service or separated from that employment. So we can plan ahead and say, hey, what would the best alternative be? And what we did in all three of these cases is, show them the best income payout on an indexed annuity that has a great front-end bonus towards income, has a guaranteed growth rate if you want to wait a couple of years before you take income. And the other thing is with the pensions, typically, you retire and you start them right away. With the annuity version, or in other words, your personal pension through an insurance company that you can set up on your own and you control the balance of the account, you control, when you start taking income, and a lot of other things that, aren't actually controllable with the pension. So, what we did is, by and large, if we have a $46,000 a year payout, reduce it by about 10%, and that's the payout if you want to keep your money in a very similar type situation. But the good part about that is, let's say down the road, let's say you're 80 years old, you're taking your $46,000 a year, you're taking, let's say, $42,000 a year out of the other account, and you think, well, that's still kind of a hit. But wait a minute, what about in the future? You might need that money. What if you need an extra chunk that you can take out of that account? You can't call your pension plan and say, hey, I decided I'm going to lump sum a piece of it. I just want 10% out. Well, you can do that with the annuities. You can also say, hey, I'm 80 years old, I'm getting sick, or I just had a stroke, heaven forbid something bad happens, and you have to go to a nursing home. Well, with the pension that's annuity only, you don't have access to the balance of the account. On the personal pension, you do. Let's say there's still $300,000 left in value because the thing's been growing almost as fast as you've been pulling your money out. Well, that $300,000 is available to you to use for that final end of care. And if you don't use it, the other thing is if you end up not needing it for final expenses, or if there's still considerable amount in that account, and in some cases, if you look at projections and you look at past history, there should be a very similar amount as what you started. In other words, you can almost live off keep the principal intact, give or take a few bucks, and then still have access to that cash guaranteed for life. If that account runs dry and you run out of money, they still pay you. But if you don't, you can use it without penalty. Your heirs can inherit it without penalty. Your spouse could get it and turn it on for income for his or herself if you set it up to do that. Or you can just have it set up so that both of you get a paycheck every month, and the last one who dies leaves whatever's in the bucket and it passes on to your heirs. What's it worth to you to have control of an extra $500,000 throughout your lifetime that you can use for 100 other things, depending on what comes up or the flexibility? So sometimes it's worth, giving up a teeny bit of that payout. In most cases, not all cases, in some cases, we can actually do better with the personal pension than with the when you get through your pension plan. But in most cases, you're going to get a little bit less, but you have access to the money.
Jeff, a lot of people have pensions, and we get this question on a regular basis here, whether we should take the lump sum or the monthly annuity. Is there ever an occasion where you would take the monthly annuity over the lump sum?
Well, actually, there are. I think with the one that I just mentioned, the state pension program, the Arizona State Pension Program, and the reason some people like to take the lump sum is, frankly, because they're not sure of the health of the pension plan, or if things might change to where they alter or somehow can't come up with the money to pay you. And insurance companies, by and large, are a little bit more solid. Honestly, if you look at the strength of what their obligations are compared to their assets, the insurance companies are stronger and less precariously perched. Here is a situation where you would want to take a lump sum from one of those life-only annuities. Now, the state pension, for example, if you're a school teacher, work for the state government, you would have really only two options. There's not like a 5-year payout option. It's either lifetime option, lifetime with spousal benefit, or a lump sum. Now, there's sometimes there's a little combination of both where you get a little lump sum and you can still pick a part of it in an annuity. But bottom line is, if you have no heirs, no spouse, and you want to maximize your income, that might be the best way, because you don't have to worry about control. The other thing is if you have a ton of other money that you have to roll out of IRAs and other things, maybe you had a job before you worked for the government that had a 401k and it grew to $1 million and you've got to pull that out anyway, or you have that big nest egg for the rainy day funds or whatever, and you don't really care about losing that annuity, you just want to maximize your income. Or maybe you've got an asset that you want to leave your heirs, you don't really care about the balance of the annuity account. Maybe you've got some property or other things. And again, you don't have to worry about replacing income for a spouse, and you just want to maximize it to the fullest extent possible. Now, you can also shop it for another personal type of an annuity. Insurance companies sometimes can beat the payouts on pension plans, especially now that interest rates are much higher than they were a few years ago. And you could do what's called a single premium immediate annuity that might be very close or even a little bit more than the pension through the company. But there are reasons at sometimes that you would want to take that lifetime payout, just because it creates a better cash flow, and it protects you from having to use other assets maybe that you don't want to either spend down because you're saving them for legacy or whatever. Now, there's one other scenario I want to mention that, not state pensions, but many companies like Raytheon, for example, some of the people have older pensions, not the current situation, but if they were getting ready to retire right now, they may have a lifetime annuity, a 10-year annuity, or a 5-year annuity payout. Now, you can always convert a pension. When I say convert it to a different type of an annuity, it still goes into an IRA. There's no tax ramifications to this process to change your lump sum to something that pays you out over time. You just have to pay taxes on it as you collect it over time. Well, it might make sense to take a 5-year payout or a 10-year payout from a different pension, and instead of having like $1.2 million, let's say you take $250,000 out for the next 5 years. Well, you could live on, let's say, 100 of it and put the other $150,000, pay taxes on it. Maybe $50,000 goes to taxes and $100,000 is left. You can put that $100,000 into a LIRP. I love that plan, is a life insurance retirement plan, where it's like a pension annuity, only it's tax-free. Once you've paid taxes on all that money when it comes out, you put it in basically your tax-free bank, and that might generate $4,000 or $5,000 a month tax-free income on top of other incomes that you might invest in with maybe your 401k money or your other IRAs, and defer that for future income that's guaranteed through the index annuity type payout. So, you'll always live on that 100,000 plus that you want. You have a tax-free account that grows, you put 500,000 in there over the next 5 years, maybe before you die, it grows to $1 million, but there's a death benefit of $2 million. You can actually spend the death benefit through loans tax-free while you live. And then the balance of whatever is left in the death benefit minus whatever you borrowed plus the interest on the loans. But keep in mind, your cash value is growing typically at a faster pace than the interest you're paying on the loans against your death benefit. Truly life insurance, and you can get a consistent payout if you want to, or just use that as your little tax-free bank account where anytime you have a big expense, you can go grab money and not pay a tax on it. Unlike an IRA where you say, oh, I need more money, I got to fix the air conditioners, it's $38,000, and you realize you have to pull out $60,000 in order to pay the taxes on it first. Well, that's a bummer. That new air conditioning system cost you 1.5 times what you thought it was going to cost you because of the tax ramifications. Whereas if you set up a tax-free retirement through LIRPs, which I really love, indexed IUL LIRPs, then you can take money out of that account or borrow money from that account from your future death benefit tax-free, because death benefits are tax-free. And you can spend it on those things that you want without going into a new tax bracket. It creates a situation where you can control your taxes now for the next few years and pretty much ongoing into the future.
We're talking with Jeff Hogan of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson, and we've been talking about his case of the week. If our conversations resonate with you, it spawns some questions that you need the answers to. Call us right now at 520-780-9059 to request your Premier Retirement Roadmap. Happy to answer any and all questions that you might have about your retirement and your journey towards a confident retirement. You can talk about anything, and again, it's just a casual conversation. I want to point out, too, there's absolutely 100% no cost for this. There is no obligation, no judgment. So take advantage of the opportunity right now where you're thinking about it this weekend. 520-780-9059. Go ahead, call this number, leave your name, telephone number. Shelley will call you back during the week and find a time that is doable for you. You can also find out more about us online at premret.com, premret.com. Jeff, time for a break. When we come back, we've got listener questions and more when our show continues on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
You can't start a trip you've never taken without a plan, and you can't start your retirement journey without a comprehensive plan to get there safely. To request your no-cost Premier Retirement Roadmap, call 580-780-9059 or request it online at premret.com. Now back to more Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan and Jeff Shea.
We so much appreciate you joining us each and every week for Premier Retirement right here on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk. We're here for you on the radio 4 times a week, Saturdays at 7 a.m., also 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. here on KNST, and then Sundays at 11 a.m. If you have missed any part of the program today, those times are not convenient for you. You can hear our program on your terms. It's on demand with a podcast. You can listen to us in your car. Go to wherever you get your podcast, search for Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan. You'll find this show, all of our past shows, so you can stay on top of your journey towards a confident retirement. Okay, Jeff, we've got listener questions. We'll kick it off this week with Ed listening to us in Tucson. Ed writes, I'm a 60-year-old single man in good health, plan to work until I am 70. As of now, I have $400,000 in CDs, about $1 million in stocks, and $1 million in my 401k and IRA combined. So what has he got here? About a couple $1 million there. When I retire, I'll get $4,200 in Social Security, have a $4,000 in rental income portfolio, which can be somewhat insecure because the properties are in a hurricane state. So between Social Security and rental properties, another $8,200 a month. I live in a rental house paying $2,000 a month. If I stop working right now, can I retire comfortably? And also, should I be looking at buying a house or a condo? So really, there are 2 questions there.
Yeah, well, there's always an it depends in here. I really appreciate the thoroughness of the question, but there's a thing missing. What is you say, can I retire comfortably? Well, what is comfortable to you? Do you need $250 a year or do you need $100,000 a year? You know, if you use the 4% rule, is kind of the conventional wisdom in the stock market based on, history of volatility in markets, a stock market that averages 10%, a bond market that averages about 5%. But are volatile, and somehow you can only take 4% out. But if you have, $2.5 million roughly in assets, there's $100,000 a year right there. If you kept it in a stock and bond portfolio, you'd, likely never run out of money unless, the volatility becomes consistently like it was in the last decade of 2000 to 2010, where we had 2 big market crashes. That would totally ruin your plans and make the withdrawal rate of 4% a little bit too high. Now, here's what I would like to do, just if I talk to you about a plan that would increase that 4% rule with $1 million. If you're 68, if you were going to retire, let's say you're planning on retiring, you have to give a little bit of notice and get replaced. So let's say it's going to be next year. You could put $1 million of, let's say that 401k IRA, you have to take that out in a few years anyway. You can lock that into a guaranteed equalized payment over the rest of your life through an income rider annuity. You get a 30% bonus. It'd be 1.3 right away. Another 8% is added on top of that. So there's, it's going to be 1.4 million-ish in income value. And if you take that and about roughly a 5%, 5.5% payout, you're looking at about $90,000 a year guaranteed just from that million, rather than $1 million from all of it. You can take, 40% of your money and get almost the same income guaranteed forever. And this is in an account that, if you look at back-tested history of, how the indexes perform, the fact that it's a principal protected annuity account, fixed index annuity. I know that's a little unconventional wisdom, but I love these for IRAs. Here's why. When you get older, you have to start taking the required minimum distributions out, and it starts low. And the older you get, the more and more you have to take out. Well, my opinion is you should spend more money while you're younger and can, and spend less money later, because you're just going to be in a bigger tax bracket pulling out money you're not going to be able to spend or use anyway. So why not make a plan where you already know what your taxes are going to be for the rest of your life, basically, because you know what your income's going to be on a steady basis. And, let's say you put $1 million in there and you get 90,000 out. Let's say you live another 25 years. You're looking at a couple million out of that. And very likely there's still going to be close to, $500,000 or more in that account that you can leave your heirs or to use. In the meantime, you've got another 1.5 million roughly, not including the rental house, that you could swing for the fences and, buy stocks, bonds, maybe buy a really nice house to live in, and just the interest on what's left can, pay the taxes, insurance, and all the costs. And you could still probably live on 150,000 or more net, spendable income after having a paid off house. Now, I know that rental property that it might be insecure because of Hurricane State and all that, but I mean, you're still making 150,000 gross without that rental income if you just did the $1 million in the lifetime annuity from your IRA. So, if you need $250,000, I still think that's reasonable. If you can live on 150,000, that's like so doable. You should have retired yesterday. So that would be my take. I also like the idea of owning a property if you know where you're going to live. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of flexibility in knowing you can just rent a house for $2,000 and move anytime you want to, and maybe even pay less than you would if you were to buy that house or to finance that house. Your payment would probably be more than that for that same house. The other thing is you probably wouldn't do that. You'd pay cash. Well, what's the opportunity cost on that money? If you could rent for $2,000 a month, but the $500,000 you'd put in the house could generate at least $2,000 a month in interest, I mean, you're really not going in the hole at all, are you? And maybe you can actually grow that asset. So I'm not necessarily you have to buy a house because it's the American dream. That's what you're supposed to do. I let the math dictate what you do. I also have to include lifestyle. What's your lifestyle? Do you like being kind of footloose and fancy free, knowing that you could give notice and say, hey, I'm moving out. I want to go to Texas for a while, or I want to go to Florida, try the humid, sunny state instead of the dry one here in Arizona, or hey, I want to move to the mountains and get out of the sun forever. And I want to do it next week rather than, I got to wait till the market gets better so I can sell my house type of a thing. So there's a lot of issues that what ifs and it depends questions, I guess, in this question. Hopefully I've addressed them, or at least made you think of more questions that you need to reconcile or come to grips with before you made that retirement decision. But if you're used to making $400,000 a year and you spend every penny of that, you might be a little short. But most people can retire on those numbers that I mentioned, especially if you set up some guaranteed income that you can't outlive, knowing that's going to pay your minimum bills, and then have some flexibility with the rest.
Well, Ed says he's 68 and he's a single guy. He doesn't say whether he has any children, whether legacy is part of this as well, too. Sounds like he just wants to, live a good life for himself. But I think with $2.4 million in equities, or $2.4 million stocks, and an 401k IRA, and possibly $8,000 a month coming in on a regular basis, that he should be able to do pretty much whatever he wants. A lot of questions that we don't have the answers to, Ed. Call us at 520-780-9059 and set up your appointment with Jeff. We appreciate you listening to us in Tucson, and of course, you'll get Jeff's book, Retirement: The Road Ahead. Next question. Sharon is in Green Valley. She says, is it best to work with an advisor who's independent like yourself, or a large firm? What are the differences? I'm not investment savvy, and I'm entering retirement. I need to make sure I hire someone or a firm that is going to be helpful and maybe is somehow insured.
Well, I'm pretty biased in this. The reason I work independently is because I can have more options and nobody telling me what I have to do for my clients. The client can actually tell me. I'm very biased towards the independent like myself. I'm sure if you asked an institution, they'd tell you all the reasons you should work with an institution. As far as the insurance goes, insured, secured, and guaranteed is what insurance companies do. They're insured by actual assets, plus surpluses, plus reserves, plus a state guarantee fund that's bigger than anyone's ever even conceived of needing. Hasn't even been tapped for that matter, because insurance companies are very, very solvent. I use insurance companies for annuities or for pensions for part of the income. The other thing is usually if you work with a big firm, they're either insurance or they're either brokerage, and they're a one-trick pony. They only want to manage an asset. I can use, the different institutions that are available. We can even get private equity available to us, which, in many cases, the big firms have access to, but only for their elite clients that, have maybe millions and millions of dollars with them. I don't know what your assets are worth, but the bottom line is you can get a little bit more independence, more focused attention to you and your needs rather than what's generally speaking kind of a cookie cutter plan of whatever the investment officer at Merrill Lynch or wherever you're going to do business, Schwab or whatever, decides that, is their investment mix, and you're pretty much locked into that. You might still be paying an advisor a fee who doesn't really do much other than collect a fee and answer the phone when you call, hopefully, or, meet you on the golf course once in a while. But I like the flexibility that we have because in reality, we are licensed as a fiduciary. We can work for you. When it comes to investments, we have our securities held at Fidelity. The majority of them, we have some at Schwab and other places, but the majority are held at Fidelity. I mean, there's SIPC insurance. I mean, there's millions and millions of dollars of insurance behind, bad things happening. Now, I can't ensure that there can't be a market crash. And if you invest your money in NVIDIA just because it, has tripled in value over the last few years, it's going to continue to do that. I mean, you could lose half your money in those things. Those aren't insured. That's what you have to discuss with your advisor. How much risk do you want to take? And hopefully that advisor is doing what you ask and giving you a portfolio that matches your risk tolerance or has some stop losses where you say the most I can risk is 10%. Well, great. Then we're only going to risk this much, and we're going to, stop you out of the market if the market starts going down because we know what your limits are. So, we can do that on a one-off basis more than kind of a large approach that some of the big companies are forced to do. I know if you go to the banks, which are typically aligned with the brokerage firms, you can get representatives there, but they just do what they're handed down as far as what they have to do for you. I worked for a company like that for the first few years of my career. I was a stockbroker, worked for a firm that basically in the morning they would tell us what we were selling that day, or what they called it buying. We were buying for our clients, but we were really just selling it. And, we didn't have any flexibility. And sometimes the investments were great. And I had people take me to really nice dinners to pay me back for the great job I was doing. I had other people that, couldn't talk more horribly about me because, we got involved in it, a bad one in the wrong day. But, it's just you're at the mercy of people that are pulling the strings. And, we're just puppets in that business when we work for big firms. When we're independent, you get to say what's on your mind. And I guess in a way, we're your puppet. And if we cease to do what you want, then you don't have to work with us anymore. You can move on. So I only want happy clients, and most clients only want to be happy with their advisor. So it should be a win-win situation. And the best way to do that is get to know you. After a few visits, we should know each other, and we should know what your goals are. And we should develop a plan that, meets those goals, in my opinion, would be the best based on my experience. And if you like it, then you move forward. If you don't like it, you keep kicking tires and find somebody that you gel with, somebody that you think you can get along with, somebody that maybe speaks your language, so to speak, as far as, able to help you understand what's going on and enough to be confident with their ability to serve you. If that happens to be us, great. If it happens to be somebody else, great. I'm happy for anybody who gets an advisor that they're happy with. It doesn't have to be us. It just has to be somebody that, in my opinion, serves their needs based on what they truly want and what they truly need rather than what a firm tells them you need.
Well, Jeff, I always think of it this way. Bigger is not always better. And, I'll use the analogy of the hardware store or the tool store. I mean, I can go to Lowe's or Home Depot. I can ask about the drills. Somebody in a red vest will point me down the aisle. They'll be on the left-hand side, and I'm on my own to try to figure out which is the best for me. But if I go to, let's say, a very, local Tucson hardware store that's been around in the community for years, and, the people working there have done the projects that you're talking about, they can not only show me the drills that they have, but they can show me the best ones for what I want to do. And it's sort of like the tools we have in the toolbox here at Premier Retirement. We've got financial tools. So I think when you come to a smaller shop like us here at Premier Retirement, bigger is not always better. We're a boutique agency, so we can take the time with our clients to show you the tools that we might use to help you achieve your goals. So, Sharon, it was a very good question. I appreciate you asking us that question. And again, if you'd like to come and sit down with us and sort of vet the firm a bit, 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. And of course, we'll send you out Jeff's book, Retirement, The Road Ahead. Next question, Oscar listening to us in Sabino Canyon. Oscar writes, there's a great deal of information available about safe withdrawal rates, including all the reasons that 4% may be either too low or too high, as well as different spending strategies and how they impact withdrawal rates. There doesn't seem to be nearly as much discussion about a perpetual withdrawal rate, which I think is just setting the withdrawal percentage at a low enough amount so that the original principal amount never decreases. As far as I can tell, the difference between a safe withdrawal rate and a perpetual withdrawal rate is about 0.5%. So given the massive increase in safety with a perpetual withdrawal rate, I would think that this should be any planner's aspirational goal. I think it would also be useful to hear your thoughts on how to set a perpetual withdrawal rate and the impact on potential spending strategies.
Well, I think if you're a true planner, a true advisor, that you're trying to plan for income in retirement, it's definitely an aspirational goal. It's like the primary focus is income planning, but we have to make sure that the investments correlate with the type of income we're getting. Now, the way you're speaking is you've probably only been exposed to stocks, bonds, and cash, basically the brokerage industry, which, they like to make money over and over again on every transaction. They want to make money over and over again, the same money forever. And that's fine. That's their business model, but they don't like stuff that guarantees income. They just say, well, it's going to be volatile and that's just part of the market and it goes up and it goes down. Oh, well, take your 4% or, a perpetual, rate may be higher, maybe lower. It should be okay. Well, there's no guarantee it'll be okay. In fact, if the decade between 2000 and 2010 repeated 2 times during your retirement, you'd be broke at 4%. You would if you took out 4% and kept increasing those withdrawal rates based on a similar increase to your Social Security based on inflation. So, and that's typically what those 4% rules include is, kind of a little growth rate on the balance, 4% of the balance, and hopefully it grows more than 4% most of the time, and you're hopefully going to get an increase. So what we want to do is secure some income. And I mentioned that in the first question is what I like to do is go outside the box of portfolio management, because I think a planner's aspirational goal is to help you with whatever product and service is available, not just what the broker dealer that they work for says they have to sell you, stock or a bond or a portfolio of a 60-40 mix or a 70-30 mix or a 50-50 mix of stocks and bonds and a little bit of cash and hope it doesn't run out. And all the while they're trading in the back room, they're getting the spreads between the bid and the ask prices. There's a lot of cha-ching money flow going on that you don't really know about or see. Then, of course, sometimes the funds or ETFs have fees. The advisor probably charges a fee. And, it's great to have a perpetual fee and commission and cha-ching make money program, too. And that's what the brokerage industry is set up. I'm not indicting them. I mean, we use brokerage industries. We use, we hold our stuff at Fidelity, so we're not associated with a bank per se, but we still use a custodian. For the fee, we have the unlimited trading. We don't, take spreads or fees on any of the other stuff. But where we step outside that box of the typical portfolio manager, portfolio, fee-based advisor that, many times calls themselves a fiduciary, but only does one thing, I think you need to look outside that box. And we look for insurance companies to insure that perpetual withdrawal rate. And I didn't see your age in the question or hear it. So I don't know how old you are, but let's just say you're 70 and you want to start taking that income out because you know that in a few years you have to anyway from your IRAs. You could convert some of that portfolio into income generating indexed annuities that have a track record of, paying better than 6 or 8% a year, which is pretty solid compared to anybody's diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds. And they're based on a return of that nature. In some cases, they do better. In fact, lately, they've done a lot better. But the company is able to guarantee you income for life at maybe a 7 or 8% payout rate on what you put in rather than a 4% payout rate. Wouldn't you like to only use half of your money instead of, let's say you have $1 million just for purposes of illustration. You could put $1 million and take 4%, that's $40,000 a year. Well, what if you could put half of that in an annuity and get $40,000 a year and still have that $500,000 a year to play with or to try to swing for the fences, maybe go more aggressive because it doesn't really matter if you lose it because you're still getting the $40,000 a year that you thought you were going to get off that $1 million. That plus your pension, Social Security and other things, maybe you're over $150,000 a year and you're feeling pretty good about it. But, if you had the entire $1 million tied up in a 4% rule plan, you'd be scared to spend a little bit more if something bad happened, you wanted to go on a trip or help one of your kids out and, dip into that account because then you have to adjust that 4% down. Well, what if you had that same 4% income based on an 8% income on half your money that's guaranteed and insured? Even if you run out of money on that $500,000, they're going to keep paying you. That's a pretty strong proposition. If there was a mutual fund that says, hey, we like the 4% rule and go ahead, you just keep it in the mutual fund. And if we run out of money, we'll still pay you. I mean, everybody buy that mutual fund, wouldn't they? But the mutual fund companies and the broker dealers, I'll tell you should hate annuities. Why would you hate an annuity that pays you whether the money's there or money's not? They're making a guarantee to you and they have a surplus of funds that will be there for you if for some reason that product or that particular annuity underperforms their estimates. And they already know what the estimates are. They're going to give you a contract that says exactly what they'll pay you. So we can tell what they think they're going to make. And, by and large, they're not going to be stupid enough to make a promise that they don't think they can keep. Otherwise, insurance companies would be going out of business, not, flourishing like they are. Some people say, well, insurance companies have a lot of money. That's because they're smart. That's because they don't take undue risk. That's because they use guaranteed assets like government bonds that, have never defaulted. Hopefully they never will. I hope that never comes a day, but where that happens. But, they keep your money in safe places and they only bet your interest on, markets through options and other leverage strategies. So they can make more money on your money than you and I can make it just going out on a retail basis and investing in bonds or other income producing assets. And because they can use their economies of scale and the fact that they're a huge institution to buy better than you and I can, they can pay you more. So why not ride their pony? Why not get on the back of that horse and ride? Mm-hmm. It's a better deal. Let them secure less of your assets for more income, and then have that extra nest egg to do whatever you want with. Take trips, build an addition on your house, help a kid buy his first car, help your grandkids go to college. Whatever you want to do, you're not jeopardizing your income if you set it up that way. And maybe you say, hey, well, what if I put 3/4 of it in there and have even more income? That's a 6% payout or a much higher payout. A 6% rule would be $60,000. But what if you put more and got your $60,000 or $80,000 out of and still had $200,000 or $300,000 left to play with or to sit back and relax and know that that's your buffer, that little nest egg that you need for those rainy day things that come up, kind of those unknown things that jump out at you and catch you by surprise.
Oscar, thanks for that question. Of course, we'll be sending you out Jeff's book, Retirement: The Road Ahead. Want to thank Ed and Sharon as well, too. If you have a question you'd like us to answer on the air, you can get it to us by calling it in at 520-780-9059. Shelley will take it down, or you can go out to our website, which is premret.com, premret.com. Leave it there, of course, and if we use it on the air, we'll send you Jeff's book, Retirement: The Road Ahead. You're listening to Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan. My name's Jeff Shade, and again, before we continue, I want to remind you, 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. Call it, request your Premier Retirement Roadmap, not going to cost you a dime, no cost, no obligation whatsoever. It's just a casual conversation for you to ask your questions of Jeff that you need the answers to. Again, not going to cost you anything. 520-780-9059. You could also request your plan online by going to premret.com, premret.com. Jeff, before we get out of here, of course, Thanksgiving is ahead of us here, and before you know it, it's going to be 2025 here, so the calendar is ticking down. I want to talk about some of the tax deadlines that are coming here before December 31st that we can talk about today. First one is going to be required minimum distributions, RMDs. What do we need to know about that?
Well, you need to know that you have to take them before the end of the year that you turn 73, if you're just now turning 73. RMDs only one time can wait till, April, till your tax filing deadline. And that is the first time because, they give you a chance to say, oops, I messed up. I got to pay it, and have your accountant or TurboTax or something hopefully tell you and alert you that you needed to take an RMD last year. So if that's the case, if you do, or if you just decide, hey, I have a big tax bill this year, I don't really want to take it this year. I'd rather take 2 withdrawals on my RMDs next year because it's easier on the tax hit because of something you did this year, or maybe you worked at full income and you're not going to work next year. And you can actually put it off as part of your plan. So that's what you ought to know about RMDs. The other thing you need to know about RMDs is it's based on last December 31st value. So if you're paying your RMD in 2024, it's going to be based on whatever your account was worth on December 31 of 2023. And, that's one of the reasons that, I get a little bit worried about people. Just the whole RMD planning with risk money is, what if the market crashes between last year? Let's say you had $1 million in your IRA, a year ago on December 31st, and the market's down 40% because we have another hit like we did in 2000 and 2008. And like a lot of, smart people are thinking might happen in the next, quarter or two, especially as Trump tries to revamp government taxes, spending, and a lot of other things, there might be a little bit of worry, not to mention the world conflicts with potential, wars and conflicts around the world that, might get in the way of good market performance. Bottom line is, you still have to take that amount, even if the account's down. And if you're waiting until the end of the year and it's down, you might have to actually sell twice as many shares of that same stock that you would have a year ago. So, for some people, they just take their RMDs at the beginning of the year because they know it's based on, the current value, and they just budget that out to spend, throughout the year. Or if you think the market's going to be strong, then you want to get all those gains and, actually dollar cost average out of the market more efficiently, you can wait till the end of the year to pull them out. So again, a lot of it kind of depends on what the economic and market outlook are of when you take those out. But remember, they have to be taken out during that calendar year for whatever the value was the prior calendar year end date, December 31.
So remember those RMDs. If you forget them, it is a 25% penalty, which is quite hefty. It used to be 50%, so it was worse. But remember, 25% can be quite significant. And as Jeff said, the only time that you can go until April 1st is if it's the first year that you turn RMD age. Again, if you got questions about that, 520-780-9059. Next week, we'll continue this conversation, Jeff, here towards the end of the show about tax deadlines before December 31st. But for right now, we're out of time for this week. I want to thank you for your time, Jeff. But most importantly, I want to thank our great listeners here in the greater Tucson area for joining us. So for Jeff Ogun, I'm Jeff Shade. Have yourself a great weekend. Be sure to join us next week right here for another edition of Premier Retirement on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
Investment advisory services provided through Premier Wealth Advisors, LLC, an Arizona state-registered investment advisor. Securities transactions are placed through TD Ameritrade. Insurance and annuity products are offered through Premier Advantage Inc., DBA Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any reference to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the insurance carrier. The show is intended for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as advice or recommendations. Due to show format, accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Premier Retirement and its representatives do not provide legal or tax advice and may only conduct business with residents of states and jurisdictions where they're properly registered.